Hi everyone, I'm Talia. Welcome to Tales of Triumph, the Love Metals podcast, where we share stories of victories in life and courage in the face of adversity. Thank you for celebrating perseverance, purpose, and love with us today. We invite you to join our community by subscribing now and finding inspiration from victories big and small. Your engagement and support mean a great deal to us, enabling us to grow and inspire even more people. Our guest today is the founder of the Divine Child Doula, providing doula services in the areas of birth support, postpartum care, surrogacy, energy healing, and relationship coaching. Michelle has had the honor of serving families for 20 years as a full spectrum and trauma-informed doula. Her most rewarding role is being the mother to her 2 children, who are her greatest teachers. Being born into this world is the very first triumph we ever experience as human beings, and a miraculous victory that women rightfully earn through the incredibly intense and magical journey of becoming mothers. For some of us, we get to face this biological, emotional, and spiritual challenge with loving and unwavering support from our partners and/or care team. I am so excited to share my conversation with Michelle as we delve into the triumphs of birth, as well as her own story, which makes her the truly wonderful doula she is today. Please enjoy. This episode contains content of a sensitive nature that may be triggering for some individuals. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being our guest today. I'm so looking forward to hearing stories from the 1,400 plus births that you've attended, as well as learn more about you and your personal story and how you show up for others, especially in your role as their birth doula. So welcome. It's a joy to have you.
Thank you.
You're the founder of the Divine Child Doula. Can you tell us more about your business and the services that you offer?
So the Divine Child Doulas are a group of 3 women, and we provide services from conception to well into your postpartum period. It started 20 years ago now, and I worked solo for 10 years. And then a past student of mine was very determined to become a business partner. Now we've been working together for 10 years. So I provide majority of birth support, and they do a lot of postpartum care, energy work, and relationship coaching.
Amazing. So when I was on your site and reading about your doula group, I saw this incredible sentence on there. I'm going to read it now. We are honored to be present for one of the universe's greatest moments, the birth of a child and birth of a family. What has you recognizing this moment in a person's life as one of the universe's greatest moments?
The experience alone of just being in that energy of a life coming into the world. It's the same door as a life leaving. And so being present in that, it's pretty amazing. But the experience of watching people transform before you, and then this end result of them claiming their baby. More importantly to me, the start of people being able to have a new beginning. It's their chance to do things differently, to heal, and to start over.
So I'd love to talk about birth stories. As you said, it's one of the most incredible things in the world. Births can be unpredictable and complications can arise. Can you share a time where your client faced an unexpected challenge and you worked together to overcome it?
Oh my gosh, so many. Majority of births, I would say 99% of them, there is always going to be a hurdle. You know, I take one from last week. I had a client who struggled to get pregnant. It was a really, really long journey. So they were also on the older side, we can say. But then came the hiccup that her body was really good at growing babies. And she had a very large baby. And she also had some health issues. So things like extreme fatigue syndrome and also sensitivities to medications. So anything she takes, her body is whoa, 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 whoa. So we were starting to face a couple little dilemmas on should we induce for the size of the baby and for her geriatric age, which is the most ridiculous thing.
I'm trying not to use the word hate on the Love Metals podcast, but like I was 35 when I had my son and I heard that term for the first time, geriatric pregnancy. And I literally was like, are you kidding me?
Yes.
I'm 35.
Oh, yeah.
Geriatric? Okay. All right. Okay.
So this is a woman who is a planner. She really, really had this birth planned out in her head on how she wanted it to go down. And I really kind of kept trying to meet her at the, I got you, I'm seeing what you want, but let's also expand and look at other possibilities of what may come up. She did not want pain management. She did not want induction. She really needed to be informed, all these beautiful things that we root for. But no, she was not going into labor. She was not. And she was starting to get frustrated. So we talked a lot about letting go. We welcomed in meditations, welcomed in like visualizations, all the things. And she was scheduled for induction. She finally was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. The morning of her induction, her water's released. So excited. We're celebrating. Things happened on their own. Well, the sensations were a lot stronger than she anticipated. And you never know how it's going to feel until you're in it. Your first birth usually is longer and harder, challenging, and not just because it's your first time physically giving birth, but it's also your first time becoming a parent.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mental and emotional work to unfold as you're giving birth.
Yes.
So things just rapidly sped up for her. She wanted to meet at the hospital. So we met at the hospital, and she's not coping. And no matter what we did, it just was not working. And she finally said, I need to have that epidural, which is a celebration in itself that she was able to come to that herself. So we celebrated that. Awesome.
You're the best. I love you.
But she also immediately felt failure.
Got it.
And then she felt the fear of, I just said that I need this thing that I'm afraid of getting because I think it's now going to mean more and more interventions. So the most important thing was, let's get her comfortable. We had that little woohoo, way to go, you did it. Here you are, you're clear. Like, let's talk about what just went down. Meet her where she's at. And then it was like, okay, we're going to do everything that we can to prevent more interventions. And so she did. She was open to everything. With an epidural, she was still moving her body. She was still putting herself into different positions. She was allowing her body to rest. We were still on destination of having baby. We were just on a different flight path. She did unfortunately get a fever, and baby was showing signs of an infection, but we were like, this isn't stopping us. Like, we're so close. Now, keep in mind that she apparently has a giant beast of a baby in her, which everybody's saying, big baby, big baby. Nobody in that hospital thought she was going to have a vaginal birth. This woman was determined. She got the go-ahead. Wow. She's fully dilated. Let's start pushing. Her request was, can we start slow? And I was like, no. No, we're gunning it, girlfriend. Like, we need to get this baby out. And her big thing on her birth plan was, don't yell at me to push. Be like super calm and serene. And I made that choice to go against that birth wish. And I went in as a drill sergeant, and we had her pushing so hard. And it was a long haul, but her baby tolerated it and she pushed that baby
Beautiful.
out. And there was more care providers in that room than we normally would anticipate because of the big baby that she was going to have and the baby having an infection brewing and all that stuff. So there was a lot of people in there, and you could see a lot of, people with their arms crossed, kind of like, we all know that this isn't going to end this way. And once she had that baby's head around the corner, you started seeing people like, oh my gosh, she's doing it.
Yes.
And the whole mood changed. Everybody was now, come on, you can do it. You can do it. And she pushed her baby into the world with a whole room cheering and yelling and whoop-de-whooping. And it wasn't the calm quiet that she wanted, but she did it. And there was no
Incredible.
choice. I recently just visited her and I was like, can we talk about your birth? And she said it was absolutely everything that she needed. And I said, would you go through that? Like every step of the way, would you go through that and do it again? And she said, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. She wouldn't change a thing in her story. And that's the ultimate for me, is where we're like, okay, you jumped your hurdles. You had those challenges. You had self-doubt. You saw doubt in other people. And you proved to yourself that you could do it. And you also kind of like to everybody else. And that was a big hurrah moment.
Beautiful. That has all the elements of a triumph story. That's incredible. You have your doubts. Other people start doubting you. And then I just love how you said when the baby's head turned around the corner, she just won everyone over. I love that. That's incredible. I had shivers. When I was pregnant, I was asking all of my friends if they knew of any doulas. And one of my friends said, yeah, I know the best doula in all of Vancouver. And she's my sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how you and I know each other.
Yes.
And actually, you might like this, but today I'm wearing my necklace that is symbolic of the unity between me and my son, who you helped bring into this world.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience having you as my doula was so wonderful. I felt incredibly supported by you every step of the way throughout my pregnancy, during the birth, and after the birth as well. You shared a bit with me about why that's so important for you to make sure your clients have that feeling of support from you. Can you share more about where that motivation comes from?
I feel like it's really important to show up for people wherever they are at in whatever life stage. Somehow I've landed in the birth world, and showing up for people in one of their most vulnerable times is beyond healing for me. I haven't had that experience so much in my life until more recently, and I haven't felt alone, or that I'm having to move through life alone and not have people just leave me. And so I come from a place with a huge abandonment wound, and from, reflecting back and learning and going through this healing journey of mine, it stems from a very, very young age. I feel like when I support people in birth, I'm able to show up in all the ways that I need it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to share more about what happened when you were younger that had you feeling that you had to do life alone for so long?
So I am a child of a divorced family.
Got it.
And so growing up, I remember the day that my mom left. My dad had always said it was because of us kids. And my mom was my everything. And I never knew until I was an adult why my mom left. My mom was never going to tarnish anything about my father. And so my mom left, and my dad would not grant her custody or shared custody. So he determined when we got to see her. So visiting my mom growing up was like the best. I got all the love. I got to have all the talks and just be in a really, really loving place. With my father and my stepmother, it was a very tight household. I was never given autonomy over my own body. If I made mistakes, they were punished very hard. And so I was on this very, very tight leash. And as kids do, we explore, we rebel. And around 16 years of age, my brother got kicked out of the house and he got to go and live with my mom.
Got it.
So for me, there was another abandonment, is that my brother was gone. Life got really hard. I had people starting to pass away in my life. I wasn't really supported through that. I was exploring more about myself as a young girl, a woman coming into that age and exploring my body. I remember my stepmom finding my birth control pills. And instead of having a talk about why I had them or good job in being responsible and going and getting them, they were taken away from me. And I was punished. And I also found out, later, I got pregnant. So at 16, now I'm pregnant.
Wow.
And having to make really big choices for myself. And so I ended up having a later abortion. And then having to go through all of that, as a young kid and not having a parent that I could unravel that with. I continued on being a normal teenager, experimenting, trying new things, and my parents went through my belongings, and, back in the day, we wrote letters to our friends, and,
I remember that. Yeah.
And you keep the letters.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I was exposed. Basically, I was kicked out of my house.
Got it.
And I remember being on my front lawn and my dad threw my toothbrush at me and said, "Good luck. You no longer have a father."
Oh, Michelle.
Yeah. And so it was later in the evening. You don't have cell phones. So now I'm like, where do I go? I got my backpack. I walked to a friend's house and that family was kind of like, we don't really know what to do. I called my best friend and she had a 2-second conversation with her mom, and her mom was like, "Get her little butt over here."
Oh, I love that.
And they took me in. It was a very different experience being in that household. She made me lunches. She walked me to the door every single morning and would say, "Remember who you are and what you stand for." Every single morning. I was really fortunate to have a family that took me in and cared for me. But because my father was a man of face value, he decided that he was going to show up to my graduation with my grandparents, who were the biggest joy in my life. And before I went into our grad dinner celebration, he made me sit down and tell my grandparents why I was not living at home. So the amount of disappointment that I saw on my grandfather's face was, it was horrible. I went through the dinner and it was painful. I did not realize that my math teacher was sitting at the table next to me. And it came to the father-daughter dance. And I asked my dad if he would dance with me, and he said no.
Michelle, this is heartbreaking.
So then I asked my grandfather, and because he was so upset with me, he also said no. And it was my math teacher who stood up and asked me to dance. And so there was a man. That was a male figure. I hated math. But it was from that moment on and the remainder of those last couple months of school that he really showed up for me in a lot of ways.
Wow.
I didn't talk to my dad for a couple of years. And then when we did finally reunite, it was almost as though I had to like be on a mission to please my father and
Yeah.
make him proud of
Yeah.
me. But he never apologized. He never held space to talk about what had transpired in my childhood or anything like that. To this day, he still doesn't. We don't talk anymore again. But yeah, so ultimately, I come from a place of abandonment, and that if I don't respond a certain way or behave a certain way or act a certain way, that I'm deeply punished for it. Yeah, so it turned me into a people pleaser ultimately, and I finally am on that path of no longer being that person.
Beautiful. I love that. That's a very vulnerable place to go to and to share from. I'm very grateful that you shared that with us. I'm a firm believer that each and every one of us goes through very intentional and purposeful life lessons so that we can have genuine understanding and compassion for anyone else who's experiencing the same or something similar. And then we have the choice if we want to help them navigate through those. And you've done that so beautifully. When did you realize that you wanted to transform your earlier experiences into something that would be of service to others?
It was at the birth of my first child that I knew that I wanted to explore being a doula. I had a doula at my birth, and I always loved babies. I loved babies so much. I loved animals, and I loved elderly people. And after giving birth, I was like, oh my God, that was the coolest thing ever. You have a really rad job. I want to do that. It was actually through my work that started my healing. I have this ability to relate and to connect, and I don't hold judgment. And I'm really good at this. And it's not just a
You are.
job. Thank you.
Yes.
But it's really rewarding. And when people would say thank you and that I made a difference, I was like, here I am. Like,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yes. This is why I love sharing these kinds of stories so much. And you're such a perfect, beautiful example of this, where someone's able to take their life experiences and use it in a way to help others. And then also through that journey, be able to feel seen for who you truly are. And it's this beautiful full circle that happens. I obviously encourage anyone who's listening who maybe hasn't found that yet for themselves to start looking at your life. What's been there for you, and how can you transform it in a way that helps others? So births are often described as a transformative experience. Can you share a story of another client who emerged from their birthing journey having gone through a profound transformation?
You know, there's one in particular that's really standing out to me. Single mother. It was kind of like a last minute, I was assigned her basically. She didn't interview me. She was going through a birth program that I volunteer for. She was experiencing a lot of mental issues. She was in a very unsafe place. We were going to induce her labor because she was struggling so bad with life and everything that was coming her way, and she was going to place the baby for adoption. So I didn't know much about her until we were in the birth process. And she explained to me she was in a relationship with a man who was beyond physically abusive and did not want that child. And so she had made multiple attempts to try to terminate the pregnancy, and even told him that she did, but she could not. She made appointments, she canceled them. She was even going to go to the States for a late termination.
Wow.
And everything in her being kept saying, don't do it, don't do it. She left her home and went to a friend's house for the remainder of her pregnancy and was in hiding. She quit her job. She didn't want to be found. And her original birth wishes were that we were going to contact the adoption agency social worker person and kind of keep them up to date. They quickly found a family that was like, yeah, we'll take this baby. They had multiple children of their own already. And my client, had a quick discussion with them and thought they were a great family. She didn't want to meet the baby after delivery. She wanted the baby to go straight into nurse's arms and away from her. Like, she was very kind of like disassociating from everything.
Yeah.
But as hours went by, she started to change. And she was like, I don't want that adoptive family to be here right away. I do want to meet my son. I do want to spend time with my son. Really starting to kind of prepare herself for some closure and time with her son to even explain to him where she's coming from and why she's doing this. And ultimately, it was to protect him. And so she did. She gave birth. She was also in a very, very unwell state. And it was very clear that she should not have been making decisions for herself or for that child in that state. Thankfully, we kind of caught on to it, that something wasn't right here. And so contacted the social worker, said, you need to hold off. We need to give this woman some time here. And sure enough, she spent time with her son. She wanted to rip up the adoption papers, but she also needed to have some time to get herself healthy and to find a safe place to live. And be away from somebody who could potentially harm her and the child if he found out that indeed she did give birth. So it was supposed to be a case of like foster and not adoption. But the social worker was not a solid person and basically persuaded my client to hand over their child. And it was to a point where now my client lost the rights to her child. Oh. She still had visitations with her son, and that catapulted her healing, lining up her resources, talk therapy. She was doing anything that she could to help heal herself. And she got lawyers, and she stood up against her abuser. She reached out to me and was like, I need you to recap everything you remember about my birth. I need all the text messages. I need all the info that you have. And will you fight with me for my son? And
amazing.
Yes, I will. Absolutely. Like, she needs to know that she is not alone in this. And it wasn't just myself, but also doctors and nurses that recognized that she was in such an unwell state that no decision should have been made. She does not have custody of her son yet, but she's on her way. So, yeah, we just got to keep pushing.
That is a huge transformation to witness in someone. And it's cliche, but there really is nothing like the birth of your child that can help light a fire underneath you. And it sounds like she's a phoenix rising right now.
Absolutely.
So all the very best blessings to her. And yet another example of how you are there supporting someone and you have their back because you know the importance of that. Good work, Michelle. You're amazing. What lessons have you learned personally from your clients' birthing stories about resilience and courage and the human capacity to persevere and triumph?
I am reminded constantly that we can do hard things. Like that when you're met with a challenge, that sometimes you do need to accept help. And I've always been a person that's, I'm independent and I'll stretch myself too thin and I won't let people in and I won't allow people to help me because I can do it all. And what I've been learning is No, you can receive. You can be
Yes.
taken care of. You can be
Yeah.
held. And that doesn't make you weak. And most of all, that it actually feels really good. And I know those are my strengths, is I love to nurture and connect and go deep. And I get to do that with my people all the time. But I also need to let people do that with me.
Yes. Isn't that a wonderful thing to discover for oneself? It seems to be a common theme that comes up in a lot of my discussions, which is realizing that we're designed to do life in community. And when we deny ourselves of that for so long and go through life thinking I can do everything on my own, we're really depriving ourselves of such a beautiful gift that we're given the opportunity to have in this lifetime, which is to be in connection with others and get through journeys together. So I love that that's something you get to learn through your birthing journeys with your clients. When I held my son for the first time, I have never experienced such pure and unconditional love from me to my son. And you've been able to witness these kinds of moments with people. What is that like for you? And can you share any insights?
When somebody receives their baby, you just take a step back and watch them hold their baby, and they just intuitively start to smell their baby, and their hands are moving all over their baby's body, and it's almost like their fingertips are memorizing every little crevice and dimple. And that's in the moment where you're like, this person is going to do absolutely everything and anything they can do to protect that little human. And when you didn't think that you were capable of loving something so much, you just learned it. And even more so when you have a second child or a third child and you don't think that your heart can expand, it does. And
wow.
I have felt unconditional love from my mother. And I have also felt what it's like to have conditions. You know, whenever I look at my clients or whenever I even look at my own children, I kind of almost make a little like prayer that they are just going to cruise through life and protect and love and show up for this child and this soul exactly how they need to be shown up for. And it's the same thing as when I claimed my first baby. I was like, I'm going to be different than what I was taught. And I see
Absolutely.
that. And I always wish for that for my people.
Well, I think your blessing definitely worked on mine. So, yeah, obviously, not all birthing stories end in that kind of joy. And I imagine you've been there for those kinds of moments as well. How do you help families who instead suffer the loss of a child? How do you help them navigate that hardship?
So one of my titles is as a loss doula, and I support people in terminations. I support people when they know their baby's going to pass. And then there's been the unfortunate when we've had the unexpected loss during labor. I have a different view of death. Not saying that I'm not terrified of it, but I have a different relationship with death, and more so around infant loss. It's very difficult to, one, witness such incredible heartbreak. And I do believe I've actually heard a mother's heart break. I can remember the moment vividly. Like if there's any sound of a mother screaming, that is heartbreak. I have heard it. But then I've also witnessed that same mother persevere through the loss of her child. When I'm with somebody who's lost their baby or losing their baby, it's very, very important to meet them where they're at. Not everybody wants to talk. Not everybody wants to explain. Not everybody wants to ask questions. A lot of time there's a lot of shame and blame that they feel within themselves, that they failed, that they did something wrong, that they're not worthy of that child. So often I take the lead of my clients, and when they start to talk, I shut up and listen. Or if they ask me what my views are, I will be very honest with them. I don't think that we need to sugarcoat grief and loss.
Yeah.
And we really need to break that stigma because so many people suffer pregnancy loss and infant loss. So when a family loses their baby, I do try and open their eyes and welcome them into a community that you never want to be a part of, which is a parent of loss. Try to celebrate that baby for who they are and the lessons that they were to bring forward. Honoring that baby by holding them, taking pictures of them, naming them, bathing them, introducing them to siblings or family members, like not to be afraid of that baby. And I remember those babies and I remember their names, and I will reach out to my clients and say, today I'm thinking of your baby. There's also the other side to loss, where when you support somebody and they finally go home and some time has passed, you do a little bit of a check-in, but you also need to really read the room. There's a lot of times where the family don't want contact afterwards. And I have to honor that. I have to let that selfishness of myself go, that they don't want to have connections to the most horrible day of their life. And that's okay. Often it's teaching them how to accept help or tell people exactly what they need, whether it's space or meals or just come and sit with me, or can we go scream somewhere? And sometimes it's revisiting them months later and they want to remember details, or that they weren't ready for pictures right away and now they're wanting pictures. I still have pictures on hold from a family of over 5 years ago that they've just have not wanted to talk and explore their son's death and birth. And I ran into them on the street about 3 years ago and they're like, please just hold them. We'll come to you when we're ready. Grief and loss, it's a wild thing. There is no right or wrong.
Yeah. I just had a conversation with a mom who lost her child to cancer. Yeah, I learned a lot about grief in that conversation. Postpartum depression and anxiety are also common challenges that families face. How do you recognize the signs, and what advice do you give parents who are experiencing that right now?
I actually try and get a jump start on it prenatally, so before the birth. Has somebody experienced depression or anxiety or mood disorders before pregnancy or during pregnancy? Are they prone to them? If so, let's start working in a preventative place. So lining up supports, making sure that you have a counselor, making sure that you have a community behind you, and making sure that your immediate postpartum plan is strong. Who's feeding you? Who's cleaning your house? Who's taking the dog for a walk? Who's going to be coming to visit and when? Yeah. The goal is to let the birthing person heal and rest and get as much sleep and nutrition as possible in that early postpartum. When we start to recognize signs of detachment, of struggling, and it might not come up as I'm not eating, I'm not hungry. It could come up in a lot of different ways. Somebody's home
Got
who
it.
is normally tickety-boo, it may be really untangled. It may be that their self-care isn't being taken care of, basically. Trying to catch them in it, but also discussing it and not being afraid of the language. Before, we used to be
Yes.
all about tippy-toeing around the word postpartum depression. Now I just use the language. How are you feeling? Let's talk about it. And
Amazing.
you're starting to display behaviors of somebody who is struggling, not waiting for them to say, I need help. You need to be proactive.
Yeah.
I love community. If you were to put a shout out on your social media that there is somebody struggling and they need help, you watch everybody kick in. They don't care if they know that person or not. I'm making a pasta. I have this clothing. I can take their dog for a walk. I can come and sit with that person. I'm a house cleaner.
Beautiful.
And you say yes.
Amazing.
So it's all about
Yeah.
not staying silent, calling it for what it is, and putting small tasks in hand for these people.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there are 3 different kinds of victory stories I like to ask guests to share about. And the first one is small daily victories. How do you celebrate small daily victories with your clients as well as for yourself?
So for myself, it's as simple as responding to texts and emails. I have ADHD and I am a procrastinator. So that's really important to me that I stay on top of those types of things so that I don't feel overwhelmed. One of my responsibilities to my clients is that I'm available to them 24/7. If a client reaches out to me and I can respond to them quickly, one, feel reassured that yes, I am there for them, and that makes me feel good. In general, the small victories for my clients is we celebrate when we change our clothes every single day. We celebrate when we take a shower.
Yes.
We celebrate when we eat a hot meal. But any sort of milestone that is met with my clients, especially in their postpartum time, we celebrate it. Your baby made it to their birth weight. Wow. You're doing things right. You were able to calm your baby down. You must be a calm parent. So it's just reinforcing. And when I have a client that says thanks, that really helps. Those few words mean the world to me.
It's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. The next kind of victory is the victory within a failure. Can you share a time when you experienced a quote unquote failure that ended up being a beautiful victory for you?
It is a hard question because I'm a highly anxious person. I'm afraid of disappointing people. I'm afraid of failure. A simple text of, can we have a phone call? I immediately go to a place of, I've done something wrong.
I get it.
Right?
I totally get it.
And so part of my healing is I need to sit with myself and be like, Michelle, use all the parts of yourself, your brain, your heart, your gut. Is this anxiety talking? Is this past trauma talking? If I can diffuse myself so much quicker, before I would explode, I'd be reactive. And now I'm like, okay, switch the lens.
I like that you say switch the lens and touched on the purpose of this question, which is instead of seeing a failure as that's the end of it. Okay, I know there's a victory in there. There's something within that lesson that I just learned or whatever just happened that I can switch the lens on to be something that's positive in our life.
I mean, I constantly am doing that with my clients. Flip the switch, change the lens, especially when it comes to adversity and birth trauma, or the sense that they have failed or that they didn't do right. And so I always try and see the beauty in the hardships. And that's the biggest thing that birth has taught me.
And then this brings us to your rainbow story, which is an identifiable storyline in your life that starts off with a life lesson that will manifest its way throughout your life and travel through all the different colors of the rainbow and be connected to your pot of gold, your life's purpose. Have you been able to identify what your rainbow story is? And if so, can you share that with us?
I think I touched on it a little bit earlier when I said I've always been connected to animals. I've had this love for babies and caring for them. I was the best babysitter. Elderly folks, I love time with elders. I can sit down on a bench with an older person and just sit with them or say, how are you doing? And have a moment and connect with them. Like, it just fills my cup.
Yeah.
And I think that this part of me, this empath in me, this need to take care of others, heal my inner child, has led me to this career of servitude. I am meant to serve families and people. I am meant to take care of people as a doula, a mother, a partner. I know what my calling is, and I don't care if I make $1 million doing it. I have never felt more proud of myself for finally finding my calling.
Beautiful. I love that. And you know that it's your calling when you're like, okay, if I'm not going to make a penny from this, does it still fulfill my heart when I think about continuing to do it? And that's a real telltale sign of whether you've discovered what your calling is or not. You're now embarking on creating a new business, a healing society. Can you tell us a bit more about that new venture for you?
On this journey of healing my abandonment wounds, my anxious attachments, and truly becoming the person that I want to be and the mother that I want to be, I have found all these different modalities and resources that have helped myself along the way. And fortunately, I met my partner who was also on a healing path the same time I was. So it was beautiful. And together we are like, let's start healing trauma from whatever avenue we can. So our hopes is to
I love it.
A place where you can find practitioners of all different healing modalities and start healing yourself, which will in turn heal your children and heal your family. And I think we'll have a much better world.
I think so many of us are waking up to that now.
We're not afraid of saying trauma anymore, or why am I sick? Why can't my doctors figure anything out? There's a reason for it. That's the one thing that all of us share is we all have trauma. So
trauma.
You know what? And it's
funny.
A lifelong work to say that you've healed all trauma is the impossible, but we can definitely work on it.
Last question before we go to quick round of questions. What advice would you give aspiring doulas?
Really dig deep and see if it's the right thing for you to be able to live on call, to be able to show up for others, be able to miss important dates and events, and you're not going to make a crap ton of money doing it. It's an exciting job, but you also really need to check into why do you want to do it? Yeah, that's a big question. Doulas show up at so many different points of our lives. It's not just birth.
Beautiful. Okay, Michelle, are you ready for a quick round of questions? When do you feel the most seen for who you truly are?
I think when my kids mirror back what I have desperately been trying to achieve as a parent. They show it back to me.
Beautiful. I love that. That's so fitting for our whole conversation. How do you honor yourself every day?
I speak a lot of affirmations to myself. I try to catch myself in a complaint and I rebound back with things that I'm proud of. Every day I say what I'm thankful for. and celebrate myself every day. I did this and this. Way to go.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. What's your favorite way to celebrate?
I'm going to be really honest. I love a good long bath with my crap reality shows beside the bathtub.
Beautiful.
And if we can throw in some like little munchy treats, that's all I need. That's
You're golden.
All I need. Simple pleasures.
I'm all about the baths every day, pretty much. Do you have a piece of jewelry or accessory that has meaning for you? And if so, why?
Yes. I have a little locket with my Nana's ashes in it. And I try not to wear it as much just because it is so special to me. But I see it every single day. It's there. She was always a source of strength. So that's like my pride and joy. The other thing that I carry, I don't wear it, but it's a ring that my kid's father and we never were married. But early on in our relationship, if you want to call it an engagement, we'll say that. But it was more of a commitment. And we got thumb rings. We'll never put it away. It's always on display.
Beautiful.
It's very important to me.
Excellent. And lastly, how do you define a victory or a triumph for yourself?
When I feel like I am standing taller, when I feel braver, when I feel strong, then I know growth is happening. And
beautiful.
So it's daily.
I love that. Michelle, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I knew it was going to be amazing because you're amazing. And I'm sure I speak for so many others when I say thank you so much for the work that you do. You have a magical job. It really is magic. And you do it with so much love and dedication. So I want to acknowledge you for that and just let you know that I love you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you for sharing your story with us, as well as some of the beautiful and inspiring stories of your clients. It's clear that providing consistent, reliable, non-judgmental, and truly loving support to your clients is everything to you. But I also experienced firsthand the reality of your dedication and devotion. I can never thank you enough for how you showed up for me and my son. In honor of how you were there for us, for so many others, and for so many more to come, I'd love to acknowledge you with a Love Medal certificate for going above and beyond in the area of devotion. Thank you for putting all of your heart into your work and the people you care for. If you'd like to connect with Michelle and the Divine Child Doula, we've included her contact details in the show notes. Thank you for those listening or watching. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to honor yourself or someone you care about with a love medal, please visit lovemedals.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Love Medals. I see, honor, and celebrate you. The human capacity to persevere and triumph. And triumph. And triumph. I'm going to triumph through this word, okay?
Triumph.